Okay, it's 10:05, so I think I will call this meeting to order. I want to say welcome to everyone, and I will share the agenda shortly in regard to what we'll be discussing today. But my name is Natrice Bryant. I am the new Public-Private Partnership Director for the state of Colorado. My office currently sits in the Department of Personnel and Administration, so it's nice to see our guests and also our commissioners who are here from the Economic Development Commission. We will be doing some welcomes, as well as I have a PowerPoint presentation that I will talk through today in regard to how this subcommittee will operate. It's based on statute, but also want to get some feedback from the commissioners as well as how they would like to see this meeting moving forward, as well as the cadence in which this meeting will occur. I know we're all very busy, but I do want to make sure we get dates on calendars in advance. In addition to that, we'll go through a little bit of the purpose of the Economic Development Subcommittee, as well as one of the proposed projects. Luckily, we do have a new project already coming up, so we've been rocking and rolling since June. So I'll have a brief presentation on that particular proposed project as well. I know right now we've got a couple of folks that are still joining just due to connectivity issues. So for the meantime, I will go ahead and turn it over to Jeff Kraft, who would like to say a couple of words and welcome.
Thank you so much, Natrice. And I'll just say we're delighted to get a chance to work with Natrice, who is really stellar at everything she does. Just want to say a few words sort of on behalf of OEDIT and want to thank the EDC commissioners. We ask a lot from the EDC, as those of you who are on. Carrie Schiff has been on as the chair, and she's been on for a really long time, so she really understands this. But we have special meetings and early morning meetings and meetings on the road. And we do ask a lot for the commission. The commission has done a great job with a number of projects, including many that involve public-private partnerships like the Regional Tourism Act program and the Enterprise Zone program and some of the special arrangements that you've funded through a strategic fund. And those things don't go unnoticed. When you do a great job, you get more handed to you. But we're so thankful for the four of you who are sort of stepping up and volunteering. And I think you all do bring tremendous legislative, business leadership, and sort of policy experience, which will be really useful. Like, you're just a group of really smart people that will help Natrice vet things and give feedback. So just wanted to express OEDIT's thanks. We're going to work closely with Natrice. Virginia and I will be involved more to help just support the commission, and just so that we are aware of all the things we're asking you to do. But Natrice is obviously the core lead of this. And yeah, like I said earlier, we'll do a phenomenal job. And it'll be really interesting, and you're going to get to work on some slightly different issues, but that are really important to the state, optimizing our state resources. So just thank you. And Natrice, thanks for giving me a chance to just kind of, jump into the middle of this. But it's going to be a really great subcommittee, and you're going to help out on some really important issues. So thank you all, commissioners.
Thank you, Jeff. It's always a pleasure working with you, so I appreciate the kind words. So that we all get to know each other and also who's on the call, if we could just do some quick introductions of who you are, where you are at, and what department or which portion of the commission you're actually going to be serving on. And then just a quick introduction. We'll take the next couple of minutes to do that so we can all get to know each other. I believe I know most of you, but I don't know all of you. So I do want to just take a moment to do some quick introductions. I'll start with me, and then I'll call you on the squares on the screen so that it'll just kind of go in order. So like I said, my name is Natrice Bryant. I am the director of the Public-Private Partnership Office. I have been with the state of Colorado working for this will be my 10th year at state government. So in my 16th year in government. Previous to that, I was working in the city and county of Denver, and then came over to state government in 2013. So 2023 will be my 10-year marker. I was the Deputy Executive Director for the Department of Local Affairs. I've also served as the Deputy Chief Customer Officer for the Office of Information Technology, and I've worked in Department of Revenue. So I've been in a lot of different agencies, but also have been able to partner in a lot of different efforts across the state. So it's a pleasure to be here with all of you. Carrie, you're next on my screen, so I'll call on you.
So I'm Carrie Schiff. I'm chair of the Economic Development Commission. I've been serving on the commission for 6 years. Was originally appointed by Governor Hickenlooper for his first term, and I am currently appointed by Governor Polis. I live and work in Boulder, but I am one of those people who takes advantage of Colorado and spends a lot of time in the great outdoors. And I have to tell you that as I've been roaming around, I've been talking about this particular program, and I get nothing but good feedback and excitement about the possibilities. So I am really thrilled to do whatever I can to help out Natrice and everything that we're going to be doing here.
Thank you, Carrie. Appreciate it. Stephen?
Good morning, everyone. Stephen Pallets. I'm a real estate attorney at the law firm of Ackerman. I've seen a lot of this growth, public-private partnership on the real estate side, and look forward to bringing that experience to this committee, in addition to kind of the general business experience I've had advising clients over the last 8 years throughout the state of Colorado. So I look forward to getting to work.
Thank you so much. David?
Yeah, good morning, everybody. I would echo Carrie's words. I'm a commissioner on the EDC. I've been on that commission since 2018. And I live and work in Montrose, Colorado, for those of you who have been to the western half of our beautiful state. And I own and operate two businesses. One's a manufacturing company in the outdoor industry. We make fly fishing gear, and that company's been a great public-private partnership story, which is why this committee really interests me. And we grew from 17 people to now we have 130.
Wow.
And so we've really had a great run with our local community in the state. And I also own and operate a development company that does a lot of public-private partnerships with river conservation, public lands, and general development. So thanks for having me on this morning.
Thank you so much for being here. And finally, of our commissioners, Simon Tafoya.
Hello. Sorry for being a little late. I had a few technical difficulties, but yep, my name is Simon Tafoya. I am probably one of the newest commissioners. I was appointed in last October by the Speaker of the House. I previously had worked for Hickenlooper and also worked in the U.S. Senate, but worked for Hickenlooper, and we, where we did a lot of the work on sort of establishing a lot of the P3 solutions, both at CDOT and elsewhere. This is how I know Mike as well. So I've been, since Hickenlooper, I've been working in the software space with like state startups, and yeah, I'm excited to see what Natrice is going to bring us.
Thank you, Simon. So that closes out our 4 commissioners that will be serving on this subcommittee, and they bring obviously a plethora of information and wealth of knowledge to this group. We do have a couple of guests that I would like to acknowledge who would like to join us on a regular basis if they are able to talk through some of the projects. So Mike, I'll go ahead and give it to you real quick so you can say hello.
Thanks, Natrice. My name is Mike Shirotis. Simon, hello again. I don't think I've met the rest of you. I am a semi-retired guy at this point, but between the years 2010 and 2015, I had the honor and challenge to set up and get running the P3 enterprise within CDOT. At that time, it was called High Performance Transportation Enterprise. These days, they have a fancier new name, Colorado Transportation Investment Office. But I had some experience that I thought might be helpful to Natrice, so offered that help, and I'm looking forward to trying to, without interfering with what you guys do, help the process along here. So thanks, nice to meet all of you.
Thank you, Mike. Your guidance has been helpful. Our next guest is Greg Johnson. Greg, go ahead and open up.
Well, thank you, Natrice. My name is Greg Johnson. I'm a lawyer. I am with the firm of Squire Patton Boggs, which is a national law firm. I help run the public-private partnership practice for the firm and work in Colorado and around the United States. So in my time, which has been lengthy, I have seen how things work well and sometimes not so well in the P3 world. And I'm honored to have the ability to contribute whatever that experience may bring in the way of help.
Thank you, Greg. And finally, the one who gets everything up and running for us, Virginia, did you want to take a moment and say hello?
Hi, everybody. It's Virginia Davis. I'm OEdit staff. I work mainly with Jeff Kraft. Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, I think I caught everybody on the call, so we'll go ahead and get started with our agenda. The first thing I would like to call to order is the meeting, but also going through the purpose of this subcommittee, just so everyone is on the same page in relation to the things that we'll be covering. Like you heard from, we have 4 commissioners who were introduced earlier in this meeting, and then we will have, of course, this public meeting, so therefore anyone can join. All of our meetings will be posted on OEdit's website for their EDC calendar, but then also I will have a website that will launch on September 1st, so that will also have a link to the agenda and meeting minutes, and then we will get all of that out to you all following each meeting. First, I'd like to talk a little bit through the purpose of this subcommittee and then kind of pause for a moment to see if there's any questions in the understanding through the legislation. So as you all know, Senate Bill 22-130 created this office, the P3 office in the Department of Personnel and Administration. The purpose of our subcommittee, all 4 of our commissioners will be reviewing any contract, sale, or lease of state property for the use of a P3 project. And we'll talk a little bit through what those projects could be, but as we're looking through this, it's pretty much expansion of early child care centers, expansion of affordable housing development, increasing behavioral and mental health capacity, and then also broadband expansion. So 4 major areas, all of which some have to do with each other and some that have nothing to do with each other. And so those projects will come to this committee. There is a review of each of those projects that's required through statute by this committee to look at the contract, lease, or sale of any state property that we're going to do. For example, I'll talk with you all a little bit later this morning about one of the properties that we're looking to do, which is Summit Village. And we'll go through a little bit of presentation, but also stop and pause for any questions that you may have. After the review of that particular proposal, if you all have feedback that you would like to provide, the commissioners are more than welcome to do so, and we will take all feedback into consideration. It is in statute that we must then go through the CDC and then present our proposal to the CDC. So that information will be provided to the Capital Development Commission through their monthly meetings. And so if there are proposals that we'll have, I will get that information to the commissioners prior to us doing that, but the review process before CDC has to go through this subcommittee. We'll also have any anticipated use for those projects and the manner in which that use is supposed to be established. And the committee, like I said, will make any recommendations on how they will, or any recommendations on what changes they would have for this particular project. And as I said, we'll be launching the website on September 1st. So there will be a public submission process that can go through a website that you can actually submit. And you can also bring up any concerns that you have on this meeting. Let me just take a step back real quick on the Capital Development Committee. So that actually is a committee that's established in the General Assembly. And so every month they have meetings that look at any sale or use of state property. And then they actually do vote on approval for sale, contract, or lease. So any recommendations that you all provide will be incorporated into that presentation so that they are also able to hear about the subcommittee's involvement in the relationship for the project. I'll pause for a moment and see if there's any questions so far. Feel free to just open up or raise your hand. Hearing none, we'll move on to what the report must contain. So each, and we'll talk about cadence at the end of the meeting because I'm interested to hear what commissioners believe would be an appropriate cadence since this office is just starting up. Our start date is actually September 1st of 2022. So we're actually ahead of schedule, yay for us, in regard to being able to have this first meeting and also call this to order. Each project report will have to have several components in order for you all to review it. And I will try to get commissioners all that information to you at least 2 weeks prior to our meeting. So that way you have time to review everything and then also know what projects we're going to be talking about. Those reports must contain the number of private partnerships for that project, a project delivery method and financing method, if that's available at the time. It can also be a method of financing that they have proposed finance method. And if they're still working through some of those things, we'll obviously put that in the presentation. And then also an overview of the social and economic values that you all can take into consideration, how this will be impacting each of the economies in which this project is proposed to go to. So those are the 3 things in statute that are required. Through our process, we will also be asking for any funding mechanisms that they have established and also historic information in regard to how many times they've done a project like this and how many times they have been successful. In the documents that I'll send you in the next couple of weeks, you will see a review of our guidelines and policies. I do have to have those reviewed by the AG before I send them out to you all. But once we get through that, what you'll see is the additional information that will be required to submit in each project proposal so that we can go through those proposals and be able to present them to you in the most effective manner and concise manner as possible. Any questions on the report? Because we're a quiet bunch today. It's going to be easy. The final thing that I want to bring to everyone's attention in statute is the unutilized and unutilized state property. And so I wanted to kind of bring attention to that definition. There is a section in our statute that talks about how we are able to utilize unutilized and underutilized state property for development of some of these projects. Last year, the Department of Personnel and Administration submitted for a grant to receive money to be able to build a mapping tool that will allow for you to type in a zip code, so to speak, and then up will pop all of the available land in that particular community that could be used for development. Once that mapping tool is live, it will also go on my website so that anyone who's interested in utilizing the property, any business is interested in coming with a proposal to the state, actually can find where this available land is and can inquire about that. Our current process is that if someone's interested, a business, private entity, or a state entity is interested in a parcel of land, they send us an email through a tool that's on the state architect's website, and they submit a request, and then we track that information through a tool that we have on the back end and send out any available land in that requested area. It's broken down by regions, and so there's 8 regions on the map. You can kind of pick and choose which ones you have interest in, and then we engage that state agency who currently is operating on that land or owns that land and have a conversation with them to say, private entity has come to us with an interest in this parcel of land. Are you still utilizing it? And then we bridge that conversation to see if there's any potential use for that parcel of land. Once that mapping tool is available, it will kind of remove that data entry piece, but also we would still go through the same process of moving through potential partners on any parcel of land that is unutilized or underutilized by the state. Any questions on that?
Latrice, so I mean, you're talking about physical land. I mean, I think there's other aspects of this as well, which is the primary one, which is right of way. And from the broadband, in the broadband context, you're gonna there's gonna be multi-jurisdictional issues. And there's one thing which I think has been attempted, which is taking stock of what already exists in the state system of right of way. A lot of that is with CDOT, and I think Mike can attest to that. The challenge then is, you know, how do you then coordinate access of that right of way in construction projects, or where you're, you know, able to lay fiber at the same time at those construction projects, and what that outlay looks like for those that sort of work. I think the other layer of that is, how do you then also work across jurisdictions? So if there's a piece of property where you need access of right of way with Excel Energy or with a city or county, how do you then map that in as well and overcome those hurdles?
Those are good questions, Commissioner Tafoya. I'll answer the ones that I have, and then of course, as this office continues to grow, we'll probably tackle a lot of those issues. We do have a working relationship with CTIO, which is the CDOT P3 component of the state government. So if there is a parcel of land that right of way does become part of the conversation, what we do is we'll bring in that particular director as well as the executive director in CDOT to understand what the issues are and what would it take. There are examples that we've actually already experienced with a couple of projects that I will present to you in the next couple of months where we actually have run into that. And so what it's taken is having conversations with the local governments, but also having conversations with the private entities in which that parcel of land might sit to determine best use of that property. And then also figuring out what steps we need to take in order to either move what's currently on there, utilize what's currently on that land, or figure out the best method of moving forward with that particular project. And I do actually have a couple of examples, but I think in my process document, one of the things I do state is that interaction with those entities must occur before this project comes forward to you all, because we need to work those details out prior to actually submitting a full proposal.
Therese, do you have support, and are the other agencies all in line that when you make an ask that they're going to deliver?
I have support, yes, but if it's not something that we can make happen, then we do have conversations with leadership in those organizations. DPA, Department of Personnel and Administration, has been great to make sure that we're connecting with the right leadership at the agencies to ensure that those things can move forward, or that path can move forward. Sometimes, Commissioner, it might take a proposal to the budget to JBC to get some of these things to occur, but we have not been in a place where we're not able to make those things happen. So I think we do have good support at the state level. We also, I feel like we have good support at the private level as well, but those conversations will continue. And as this office continues to grow, I think we'll have some additional processes that we'll have to initiate, because not everything's going to be a smooth path forward.
Unfortunately, yeah.
But I did take note in regard to the cross-jurisdictional component. Working with the local governments has been one of the key factors to make some of those challenges not necessarily go away, but make them easier, because they might need to, for example, waive zoning or change the requirements or change something that currently exists in the county. So working with the local government has been a key way for us to move forward with that particular issue, Commissioner. Any other questions in regard to any of the information I've stated so far? Okay, so that's what we have for the purpose. The next thing that I'd like to do is share a PowerPoint presentation that goes a little bit through what our processes will be, how we'll be moving forward in the office, and then also how we would like to present some of our partnerships and the projects that will move forward. So I'll go through a brief introduction, and please stop me at any point in time if you have questions, commissioners or general public that's on this call, and I'll stop and answer any questions that you might have. So as stated, the bill summation, Senate Bill 22-130 established the P3 unit that allowed for us to create agreements with private partners to operate specific areas of foundational needs that were found through the last couple of years, but also things that we've known about for several years. The first is increased behavioral health and mental health capacity expansion. So that could include facilities and capital development of those facilities, or also expansion of services. One of the things that we found just in conversations with local governments, and Commissioner, this might be part of what you're stating, but also there's additional aspects to it. We found that there are gaps specifically in the youth care for behavioral and mental health. And so that's one of the areas that we've been trying to work with our local partners. There's also the creation of the Behavioral Health Administration. And so BHA, which is part of the Human Services group, but as an administration, has been focused specifically on behavioral and mental health capacity expansion. And so we're working in partnership with some of the grant programs that they have, and also their leadership to ensure we're able to effectively increase that need. Also affordable housing development. So we all know that there is a shortage in housing, but there are specific areas in which we've seen large gaps in affordable and workforce housing for specific communities. So there'll be a couple of projects that I'll be bringing forward to you all in the next couple of months that focus specifically on affordable housing development. Commissioner Tafoya, did you have a question?
Oh, maybe a comment and maybe a question, but just on those two items. One is, I think both with behavioral health and childcare services, and perhaps these, while the other two, all of them really, you're going to see a lot of federal support or potential federal support. And I know the state has received some already, but I think that there is another element to this when we've identified, if to the extent that the need has been identified and there's a path forward to not only organize the state and local resources for a public-private partnership, but also trying to pull down those federal dollars that are competitive. And I'm not sure if there's if that's something that's on your mind or at least part of the conversation. The other piece is, as it relates to affordable housing, I think, a huge part of this is land and access to land in areas, and I'm not sure RTD and, again, cross-jurisdictional issues where RTD may own property or others own property around these nodes of transportation for for transit-oriented development that just have not been developed, right? So how are we approaching those issues to help meet the need and make land affordable and available for affordable units?
Thank you, Commissioner. So a couple of different answers. So as we're looking at the access to federal funds, one thing that I'll mention, prior to this role, I was working with OEdit to identify some transformational projects that could capitalize on the American Rescue Plan Act dollars that have come through to Colorado to focus on these 4 areas. One of the things that is beneficial from those federal dollars is that we can build a lot of things with the dollars that have come in. We can create a lot of programs, but all of those dollars expire or must be encumbered by 2024, and then everything has to be completed by 2026. And so how I'm looking at some of those projects is how can our funding source of the $15 million that we have from our treasury through the unused and underutilized tax dollars, which go into our budget for the P3 office, is how do we supplement some of those particular things so that they are able to use dollars for operations and maintenance, and we're not just stuck with 0 sustainability models behind these projects. The benefit of having federal dollars is that we're able to partner with the different state agencies to determine what uses they are going to have for those federal funds. But my intent is to also be able to supplement some of those dollars to say, okay, we've got these things technically built. Let's say we're doing a capital development and we've built a structure. We do need to figure out the sustainability model behind that. How are you funding this? Who are you contracting with? Who will be operating your facility? And how will those dollars be utilized long-term? So my plan is to help with initial development, but also to help with the sustainability model beyond 2026, because that's when a lot of these funds expire. Does that answer your question about funding?
Yeah, it does. I think there's, I guess the other piece of it, and I think you mentioned it with your answer, which is the other, competitive funding that is still out there for grants that exist. And, that could be in USDA for rural areas. It could be in, the relevant agency at the federal level. And I'm not sure, I'm having a little bit of Hickenlooper PTSD, but I'm not sure who's managing the effort in terms of connecting these dots to the federal angle of making sure that the state is drawing its fair share of federal dollars that would support all this work, right? And I know it's another layer and you're one person, but
yeah, absolutely. one person, but we'll hire more people. So it won't just be me after this. We're working with OEdit and also, like I said, the Behavioral Health Administration, Department, Local Affairs, all the state agencies that are being able to track this. As you may or may not know, OSTD is also tracking all of the use of federal dollars. And so on their website, they're tracking like how much money came in for this particular initiative, where it went. And then with the grant programs, the beauty of the partnership with OEdit is that I can reach out to Jeff and say like, hey, we've got this project. What are other grant funding sources that might be available for us to utilize so that we're able to figure out which funding sources and what's going on where. EPA is one example, like you said, USDA for rural, but there's also other local grant programs that we have at the state level that I can work with OEdit on to ensure that we're able to track all of that. Jeff, go ahead.
Yeah, no, and everything Natrice was just saying, and you know, one other nice thing is Natrice has a really good working relationship also with people like Hana Saeed. I mean, obviously Simon, you'll remember that name too, but who works in the recovery office and then has some arms into other agencies as well through the recovery office, which is kind of blended with OEdit. So if there's a specific one that comes up, you know, we can always work backwards, you know, through the recovery office as well to think about, you know, some of these other grant programs and federal grant programs to tie into. So it's a really good point, but I think it is another good reason why having Natrice, you know, kind of buddying up with us, you know, will help her have some tentacles and some arms that can reach out into other agencies.
And Commissioner, you had also asked a question in regard to access to land. So part of the ability to be able to track and look at all of our state unutilized and underutilized property is that there's additional relationships that I'll show in the next slide with the state architect. And the state architect also is able to tell me, you know, hey, we have this lease that's coming up to an end, or the state departments can reach out and say, we're not going to utilize said facility that's located on this particular parcel, but we'd like to either sell it or we'd like to give up our lease and things of that nature. So we can have conversations at that level to be able to address some of that access. You'll also find later in this presentation, it'll talk a little bit about some of the projects that we will be working with RTD on to help with those efforts to figure out where land is. And it also is additional partnerships with groups outside of state agencies. There might be local land that is owned. And one of the things I've thought about is how do we partner well with local governments if they have available land, or partner with a private entity who might have available land but doesn't have the ability to be able to do some of the project. And so that's where these conversations will come into play, is that we are able to have those discussions. And so I've been meeting with some of the locals to kind of talk through what issues they may have had, what if they're trying to build on transit, what studies need to be done. And also we have funding in our budget to help with environmental assessments, consultants, things of that nature, because as we're looking at some of the childcare service centers, the state is not, we're equipped, but we also have the new Department of Early Childhood, but there's additional consultants that might be able to help us with feasibility studies and also figuring out like, where is our demand at for childcare centers? And so those conversations are things that will continue to happen to ensure that we're able to address some of the land issues that we've seen in the past. So I hope that answers both of the questions that you had.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely more to uncover, but definitely, thank you.
Absolutely. In addition, I just wanted to go through a brief component of what the organization will look like. So as you see, there's the P3 director, which is myself. I will be hiring a real estate or financial specialist, and the goal is to have someone who has both areas of expertise within their background. And then we'll have a program assistant. And then there is a dotted line to the Office of State Architect and the Division of Capital Assets. And so those partnerships are key to the success of this office, because we need to know, one, what land do we have available? Two, what are we doing in some of our construction and some of our, like for example, what are we going to do because we have a workforce that's kind of declined in regard to everybody who's coming to work. So do we have any capital assets that we can address or find for use in the local area, like the downtown Denver area? Or do we have additional land that's outside of the metro area that we could utilize for construction of some of these properties. So you'll see that partnership being key. The state architect, as well as the director for Division of Capital Assets, will also join us later on in our meetings coming forward to kind of talk through how that partnership is necessary, but also how we can analyze some of the projects and address some of those land use concerns that we have available and some of the things that have been brought to our attention.
Where does the land board fit into that model? I can't remember if they're under the architect of the Capitol or.
The state land board fits under the Department of Natural Resources, but we do have a working relationship with them. They also have land available. And so I have a list of all their available parcels of land. Commissioner, to address one of the things that you talked about with affordable housing, there actually was a study done that has the list of parcels of land that are available that could be utilized for affordable housing that are within that municipality, that neighboring municipality, that have already had the feasibility studies done and already have been assessed. And there's about 12 parcels, which I'm happy to bring back to this committee if we want to talk through what some of those might look like. But that partnership sits under the Department of Natural Resources, but we do engage with them because they also own land that we could potentially lease out or sell if that's an interest to them, to be able to be utilized for one of the 4 components we talked about in the previous slide.
Yeah, and Latrice, I mean, sorry I keep talking, but there's another piece here, especially as it relates to rural issues and rural broadband in particular, where it's siting of towers, and especially if you're using microwave or other technologies that aren't fixed or, fixed wire or fiber to the home, and that is, co-locating on less sensitive land that is owned by the state, perhaps by a different agency, whether that's DNR or its state Forest Service or its state a state park. How can you site a microwave tower at an adjacent building as not to disturb other areas, et cetera? But I mean, it's there. I think there's a lot of other considerations, especially when you're looking at these rural areas that may be surrounded totally by public land.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And those are things that we will need to take into consideration as we continue to grow this program. So that relationship with the state land board director is very important, but also having the reach into parks and wildlife is also another piece that we've been addressing. There are some areas further east that have that exact issue that you're talking about, Commissioner. And so once I hire these individuals, we'll be able to do some additional work and connect at that level. This goes briefly through some of our goals for operation within the unit. So obviously in statute, we're developing, building, financing, operating, and maintaining public projects that have a social or economic value. These will also be posted on our website that will launch on the 1st of September. So I encourage you to take a look at those. We'll be providing a transparent process. So as stated, there will be a proposal submission page in which solicited and unsolicited proposals will be able to be submitted. There's a tracking mechanism that I will have on the back end of that system that will tell me how long, when that submission was brought to us. In statute, we do look at some of the rules and the guidance that are listed in there that state that once that proposal is submitted, you all need to hear about it within 60 days of submission. So I do have a tracking mechanism so that we don't fall behind on that particular requirement. And then also bringing innovative ideas and approaches to public projects, and then allowing for cost, risk, and benefit sharing between public and private partners. So those are the 4 values or goals that we'll be operating under to ensure that 1, we have a transparent process, and 2, we have an equitable procurement process for anything that we do in relation to P3 projects. This is kind of a blurry slide, but I'm going to go through a little bit of, and this is draft form, so of course interested in any feedback that you might have. But there's a long proposal phase or process document phase that we're going to see. We have a proposal phase that could take anywhere from 6 months to a year, going back and forth with staff, as well as the agency in which submits that for anticipated funding. But those proposals will come to you as stated within 60 days of submission, so that we have the report that you can review. We're able to have the back and forth conversation with commissioners on any requests or requirements or changes and recommendations that you think need to happen on those particular projects. So that process could take some time. After that is completed, we will then, during that process, we'll also probably have some additional stakeholdering and coalition building, and also develop a time frame where the proposal, if it is a solicited proposal where an RFI or an RFP or an ITN, and those are all terms that'll be defined in our guidelines, but that solicited proposal will go out to bid. That will then have a process behind it, which could take 3 to 6 months. We will obviously have an ongoing stakeholdering engagement process, and that'll be kind of defined in our procurement process that I'll show you in a moment. And then we bring those proposals, and I want those to be well baked before they come forward to you. So if a proposal is submitted and we decide within the office that it's probably not a good partnership because they're either lacking funding or there's a couple of things that are missing, we might go back to that proposer and say, here's some things we'd like for you to look at, looking at your program guidelines, looking at the risk that you have, what is your budget. So there might be some that are submitted that aren't ready to come forward to you all, but we'll still make you aware of those. Again, 3 to 6 months is what we're looking at there. We'll be looking at environmental assessments, due diligence that's taken place, and any market outreach and surveying that's been done, in addition to feasibility studies, so that we can bring you a full report as to what that project would look like. The next phase after, like I said, after it goes through you all, we then take it to the CDC for approval or denial. The reason I have 2 to 3 months listed on here is because it could take some time for us to get on the agenda. Of course, all of that PowerPoint that will go to the CDC, you all will have a copy of it so that you know what we're presenting. And then I will work in partnership with the state architect to establish a memo that will then go to the CDC to get us on the agenda. So that could take a couple of months depending on their agenda, especially during legislative session. And I will work to schedule those times with our legislative liaison within the department. And then once that is approved or denied, if it's denied, obviously we take a different step, but once it's approved, we then take it back to DPA's executive director, in which DPA determines if this is actually going to move forward with approval. Again, this will have to have project size, challenges with funding. We'll do some due diligence. We'll also talk about stakeholdering that's happened, and we will be able to determine by that point in time if a phase 2 environmental needs to be done on any of the property that we have. Obviously, phase 1 environmental will tell us if we have contaminated soil, if it's a good use for that particular parcel of land. But that stakeholder engagement process will include us working with the local governments to see if there's any zoning requirements or restrictions. And then if we need to put it out for solicitation, like I said, RFP, ITN, RFI, et cetera, then we would solicit that. And that could take about a year or 2, depending on what project it is. And obviously some of these will take longer. Some of these may take a shorter period of time. That's kind of the timeline that we have for our process. I will pause to see if there's any questions on those process documents. Okay. And then this is a brief abbreviated procurement state. So like I said, obviously we will do our stakeholdering well in advance to make sure, one, that we've got support, but also making sure that this is really a good project. There's a couple of reports that we've read on P3 in which some of this comprehensive technical and financial stakeholdering was necessary earlier on, and then they found out issues later on. So we want to make sure that we're able to avoid that. As stated, the proposal period will happen after we start the initial stakeholdering, and then we will select a preferred vendor. And this is if it's a solicited proposal, and then go through negotiations. These are estimated timeframes for you all. So obviously these days can change and fluctuate. And then closing of the project, which is project financing. And these are for solicited proposals. And so if there's any changes in these dates, again, you all will be the first to know about any shifts in timeline, any shifts in funding, because we do want your feedback in regard to the report that we initially submitted. But I will also provide updates to where those projects stand once that particular proposal has either been approved or denied by the CDC and you all have made recommendations on it. Here's just a couple of examples of projects that we'll start working on, and I will bring these to you all once we have a full report and a proposal on each of them. But I'm sure most of you are aware that Burnham Yard is going to be one of the projects that we'll be working on, and that's the parcel of land that is in between the 12th and Osage station. So Commissioner Tafoya, when you talked about RTD, we are working with them in partnership on that Burnham Yard site, as well as a Department of Transportation and CTIO within that department. Ridgeview campus is one that we're working on, which is through Senate Bill 22-211, which you all may or may not be familiar with, in regard to development of and repurposing of a campus that used to be utilized for rite of passage through human services. That campus is now going to be repurposed through this legislation that will allow for us to develop a navigation and treatment site for people experiencing chronic homelessness, alcohol and drug addiction. And so that we're working on a proposal for that, and I will bring that information to you all once we're ready. We also have the Governor's Mansion parking lot that we're looking at, the appropriate use for that parking lot. So I'll have some information later on. And then we have our universities that have actually reached out in regard to some expansion of childcare services on site that will be available for both employees, the community, as well as students on site. And then Summit Village, which I'll talk about in a moment. And then we're also looking at the 1881 Pierce Street locations. There's 2 parcels of land that we own at the state that we could have a better use for those particular parcels. So working with the city as well as the Division of Capital Assets to determine the best use for that particular site. I will pause. Are there any questions on these projects?
You talked a little bit about regional diversity. I know all of these, I'm not sure about Summit Village, are in Denver, correct?
Most, that's correct. Sorry, Commissioner. Yes, they are all located in Denver, except UNC would be in Greeley on campus. But there are some more that will be coming up that are actually very diverse and not in the metro area, but these are just some examples of projects that we have coming up in the metro area. Let me check the chat really quickly. I know we're running out of time, so I just want to go over this really quick in regard to the Summit Village property. So this proposed location is located in Wheat Ridge. And I'll show you a picture of where it's located. But like I stated, it was a site held by the Department of Human Services that will be transferred over to DPA for disposition. It was a site that had 7 structures on it that was built in 1974. And there's approximately 56,000 gross square feet of building area. It was initially part of the Wheat Ridge Regional Center that was created in 1916. So there's a lot of historical context behind that. For visual purposes, this is where the site is located. We actually, because of the timing for this particular project, we did present this to the CDC prior to us meeting. So I started in June. We've actually presented this for CDC, and there was a vote 5-0 for approval of sale. But this particular parcel is located right here where the black is, and it says site. And the proposal for this particular project is to utilize it for a partnership of affordable housing, expansion of early child care services, and behavioral and mental health treatment. So it actually brings in 3 components of the areas that we're supposed to focus on. And then this is just a visual for you all to see how close it is located to major roads, but that particular parcel of land is 13.8 acres. We did have letters of support from the potential buyer. And so the state architect is working on a potential purchase of land. We are looking at the environmental assessment and if that needs to be done for this parcel, since it was utilized for things outside of affordable housing. And so we'll do some due diligence on that. And I will be bringing this back to you all, but this is an aerial view of where that particular parcel of land is located. So you can see the proximity to other homes as well as the major roads. And the property was appraised for $3.1 million, but it doesn't include the demolition for a cost for demolition and remediation. If there's any asbestos on site, we will have to remediate the property. And then so now where we're at right now is the negotiation with the Affordable Housing Authority in Jefferson County on selling that particular parcel of land to them to be able to be utilized for that particular purpose that we just talked about. And so once we have that sale officially documented and drafted and ready for sale, I will be bringing that particular parcel of land back to you all to review the project plan and any submissions that we will be doing and the approved amount for that particular sale based on the demolition cost and the remediation. As stated, this is Foothills Regional Housing, which is the Jefferson County Housing Authority, is the purchaser. So the sale would be specifically to them in partnership with the county, as well as Red Rocks Community College and Stride Health. And so those will be the partners within this project to develop 60% AMI and below. It'll be in a deed restriction for the affordable housing component. Red Rocks Community College is looking to expand the child care center on site, and then there will be behavioral and mental health treatment provided by Stride Community Partners or Community Health as a community partner for this particular parcel of land. Are there questions on this particular property? I will have more details for you all in our next meeting, but I just want to give you kind of a brief overview of kind of what that particular parcel could be utilized for. So let me see if there's a question here. Yes, Jeff, the EDC, I know you all have a particular interest in Burnham Yards, so we will definitely keep you updated on the Burnham Yards site. But I do want to make sure that we're all aware that that is one major project that this unit will be working on. So you will probably receive regular updates on the status of that and when we're moving forward. Again, there's a lot of different projects that are kind of coming upstream, but I want to make sure we have a full proposal before we bring them forward to you all, and we can discuss benefits and costs and things of that nature with those projects. Any questions?
Patrice, in terms of what you will look to us as commissioners on, you know, what is it that you want most from us in terms of, you know, it looks like a lot of these deals are, you know, going to be like pro forma, and there, you know, there's a certain calculus that you're making to get them with the various partners, etc. What is it that what is the responsibility that we have to you?
So I would ask from you all commissioners to give us any input that you might have in regards to these projects. So when I send you a report on what the project is, if there's gaps that you're finding, if you think that there's a financing issue, or you think that there's something that we can see that might be problematic, or things that might also be good. I don't want to just hear problems. I would like to hear any type of good things that you feel, economic impacts that this might have, any studies that you've heard about. Those are the types of things that I would love to hear from you all, and any recommendations that you have to make the project better or be more economically impactful for those communities. Those are the types of pieces of feedback that I'm looking for. If I bring a proposal forward to you all that seems great in my eyes, but you all come back and say, hey, this actually does have a negative economic impact, I would want to hear about those, because before we go to the CDC, I would like to be able to say that we've had a conversation with this subcommittee and that we've gotten feedback and received feedback on the positives and downfalls of each of the projects, to show that we have community engagement, but also show that we have some buy-in from our experts on this committee. So,
I mean, we're serving totally a advisory role.
Correct, but also there's no approval required, but I think that part of having that advisory role is to help us be as successful as we possibly can with projects, because most P3 projects that state government has done has been infrastructure, transportation, airport. They haven't necessarily been in the affordable housing component. And so I look to you all for advising us on expertise and what makes most sense from an economic standpoint, but also a social impact standpoint.
Can I ask, I may be being too optimistic, but I always imagine we have very limited resources and lots of potential projects. So how do you think about prioritizing resources across what, you know, once you go fully public and you have all of this access for people who get excited about what they might want to do? Like, how are you thinking about prioritizing state resources?
That's a great question, Commissioner. So one of the things that we're going to be doing is accepting unsolicited proposals at a specific time frame. So we'll have state agency contact in which state agencies can reach out to me and say, hey, this is a project we want to do. I will have a time frame in which like a private entity can reach out to us and submit a proposal. So that way we can focus on the priority areas that we have with state government and that have already private partnerships established or have a partnership established with a private entity. And then we'll have our very targeted solicitation process in which we say, we have this project designed, we're ready to go, we want to put it out for RFP, and that'll obviously be within a specific time frame. I can also pull from resources within the state architect office as well as within DPA, so I can utilize some of their real estate managers so that 3 people aren't really stuck doing all of this work. And so we'll have a solicited time period, a time period in which I'll accept unsolicited proposals, and then a time period in which I focus on our state agency partners that have projects that are kind of in the works. That way we can balance the work more effectively. And that will actually be in the policy document that I plan to share with you all in the next couple of months. Does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, thanks.
Jeff?
Hey, Natrice, I know we're getting to the end, but just something I wanted to share and recap with you and the commission. We have our EDC meeting actually coming up in 2 days, our full meeting. And one of the things that, and I apologize if I missed this, but one of the things that we want to do is we want to reaffirm the nominations by our 4 generous commissioners and just have the commission affirm their participation. And I think you guys you fit the requirements in that you're not all from the same appointing authority, and having 4 of you is great because it means hopefully we can make sure we get at least, I think Natrice, our idea is at least 2 before you'd hold, but I just want to make sure that our plan is, Virginia, at the end of the meeting on Thursday is just to have the commission as a whole vote to confirm, and I think they'll do it with thanks, confirm the 4 people are their representatives. But does that make sense, Natrice? And we should still go forward and make that official vote on the record at the EDC meeting on Thursday?
Absolutely, yes.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions that we need to address in regards to the presentation? I know that an hour is a tight timeline to get all this information out to you all, but I did want to make sure that we were able to have a discussion about it before the EDC meeting in case anybody was like, what did I sign up for? Needed to back out. We'll have that official vote that'll happen on Thursday at the meeting. But I also want to discuss the cadence of this meeting to ensure, do we schedule it monthly and just say that it's going to be the Tuesday prior to the EDC meeting every month? Or do we do it quarterly? What are commissioners' preferences in regard to timing? And I can work with Virginia on time scheduling, but I wanted to see if we wanted to do monthly starting up.
I mean, I think it depends on volume in a certain way. You know, if there's nothing new to talk about, then, you know, maybe we kind of put a certain day of the month, but don't always use it. I mean, that's one way to potentially approach it.
Agree. And if I don't have any information, I can always cancel it too. So that's always an option.
I think that makes sense to me. I'd prefer it not to be in the middle of the day. That's so.
Okay.
No.
And I would suggest we don't want to be the holdup on a project. So if we needed to meet on a different day, a special meeting, I certainly would be happy to make myself available. We don't want to hold things up.
Perfect.
Yeah, I agree with you, Carrie. We seem to be able to pull those together quick, you know?
Yeah, especially if they're very early.
Perfect. So what we'll do is we'll get a time on calendars for monthly meetings. And then if there's anything that needs to change or we need to move it up, obviously I'll work with Virginia to get the information out. And then I will also commit to you all to have the agenda out a week prior. If there's any reports that you need to review, I will have those to you 2 weeks prior. That way you have all the information necessary to make decisions, but we'll keep it in the morning because it sounds like this team works better in the morning. All right.
Depends on the morning, but yeah.
Ideally mornings. Perfect. Well, I know we're, oh, no problem. Thank you. I know we're at time. We went over by about 3 minutes, but I will be sending out the meeting minutes from this meeting to you all within the next week or so. And then we will work on getting a time on calendars on a monthly cadence. And if we need to cancel or move those meetings up, we will do so. Most of the time I won't need the full hour because it'll be a proposal submission versus me doing a presentation and talking about the logistics behind the office. But for the time being, I might book about an hour and a half for the next couple of meetings because we have a couple of proposals and also a couple of things that I'd like to discuss with you all in relation to our guidelines and policies that I think are important.
Natrice, this is Mike. Are you able to send out the PowerPoint that you shared?
Yes, Mike, I will. And I'll also have it posted on the website that launches next week. So it'll all be available for you to click on, but I will send out the PowerPoint.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions or concerns? If not, I'll make a motion to end the meeting. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Natrice. Appreciate it.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.